When burgundy wine splashed across the front of my $62,000 couture rental gown, I didn't gasp, I didn't flinch, I didn't even blink. I simply looked at my daughter-in-law, Camilla Hawthorne, and said, "Sweetheart, you've just made the biggest mistake of your privileged life." I walked out of that wedding reception with wine sliding down the beadwork like dripping blood. And by the time I reached my car, I already knew exactly what I was going to do. Because when you humiliate a woman who spent 28 years as a forensic accountant for corporate fraud cases, you don't just spill wine. You start a war. But before I tell you how, if you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. Like this story and comment what you think was in that letter. I brought down the Hawthorne empire piece by piece. Let me take you back. Because the devil, as always, hides in the details. It all began about 7 months before the wedding, when my son Michael told me he was engaged to the daughter of Jonathan Hawthorne, CEO of Hawthorne Global Shipping. "Oh, Mom," Michael had said proudly, "Camilla's family owns Hawthorne Global, you know, the logistics company." Know them? Every accountant with half a brain knew them. Old money, political connections, a reputation so polished it practically glowed. Companies like that don't rise without stepping on a few skeletons. But Camilla? Oh, Camilla was gorgeous, the kind of elegant beauty money cultivates like a greenhouse flower. Except for one thing. At the first family dinner, she looked at me like I was a slightly outdated piece of furniture that didn't match the room. And that was my first warning. The wedding planning? A nightmare. Camilla had demands, and each one more absurd than the last. Venue? A private estate rented for $240,000. Flowers? Imported from the Netherlands. Photographer? A fashion industry legend charging $9,000 per hour? And my gown? "Evelyn, you simply must wear something extraordinary," she'd said. The rental price? $62,000. I nearly choked. Camilla didn't. She just waved a manicured hand. "It's our gift. Your family now." Right. The reception was a sea of wealthy elite, nearly 350 guests and only 18 from our side. I was holding a glass of sparkling water, telling a sweet story about Michael's childhood. One small drop fell from my glass onto Camilla's dress. One drop. "Oh my goodness! I reached to dab it, but that's when I saw her eyes change. Cold, calculating, predatory. Then, in a movement so rehearsed it could have been choreography, she gasped, stumbled back, and her own wine glass accidentally tipped. A full glass of deep red Bordeaux poured across my designer gown like a murder scene. "Oh, no! Evelyn, I'm so clumsy when I'm startled." The entire reception turned to stare. And she wasn't finished. "It was an accident, just like yours, of course." That was it, the moment she declared war. I looked at her, smiled calmly, and said clearly, "Don't worry, darling. Accidents happen. Though the rental company won't be happy. $62,000 is, quite a loss." I walked out through the garden, dignity intact, and dress destroyed. And in the car, with my hands shaking, my anger sharpened into something far more dangerous. Resolve. Camilla Hawthorne had just underestimated the wrong woman. 3 days later, a bill arrived. $68,400. Final damage cost. I paid without hesitation. Then I did what Camilla least expected. I started digging. Because when you've been a forensic accountant for nearly 3 decades, you learn one thing. Everyone has secrets. Rich families simply hide theirs better. I went straight to my home office, pulled out old contacts, old case files, old access points. Forensic accountants never forget where the bodies are buried, metaphorically or financially. My first sweep was surface level. Hawthorne Global's corporate filings, annual reports, SEC statements, subsidiary registrations. On paper, they shimmered, flawless. Too flawless. And in my world, too perfect is the first sign of rot. I called my old colleague Diane Collins, still working at the firm. "Evelyn," she said, "why on earth are you suddenly interested in Hawthorne Global?" "Let's call it personal motivation. Can you help me access the databases we used back in the day?" She hesitated, then sighed. "You're going to get yourself into trouble." "Trouble," I murmured, "has already arrived." That evening, Michael called. "Hi, sweetheart." But his voice, tense, worried. "Mom, Camilla feels awful about the dress. Dad Hawthorne wants to pay the cleaning bill." "How generous. Tell Jonathan the bill was $68,400 and it's already paid." The silence that followed was thick. 68,000? Mom, Camilla said it was just a normal dress. Interesting. Looks like your bride is already telling you stories. Mom, that's not fair. It was an accident. Of course it was, dear. But he heard it. He heard the steel beneath my sweetness. Mom, please don't make this into something it's not. I'm not making anything. I'm simply learning a great deal about your new family. I hung up and stared at the files spread across my desk. On the surface, Hawthorne Global was an empire. Underneath, a maze. And I know something about mazes. They're built to hide something. 2 weeks in, I found the first real tear in the fabric. One subsidiary, Hawthorne Maritime Holdings, reported shipping cargo valued at $15.7 million through the port of Savannah. But the customs declarations? Only $10.3 million. Over $5 million gone without explanation. And that was just one port, 1 year. Diane whispered, "Evelyn, if this is systematic, we're talking tens of millions," I finished. "Maybe more." My phone rang again. Michael. "Mom, Dad Hawthorne wants to meet you for lunch." Ah, there it was, the first move. For what? He mentioned business opportunities. A bribe, sweetheart. He wants to buy me. What? Never mind. Tell him I'll be there. We met at Le Romano's, one of those restaurants where the silverware weighs more than a small dog. Jonathan Hawthorne stood when I approached, tall, groomed, polished, elegant in a way only inherited wealth can achieve. "Evelyn, thank you for coming. I've taken the liberty of ordering wine. The 2016 Bordeaux here is exquisite. I'll stick to water." His smile tightened. About the dress. "Accidents happen," I said smoothly. "I insist on reimbursing you." How thoughtful. The total was $68,400. He hit it well, but his expression flickered. He already knew the price. He'd done his homework. Then came the real reason for lunch. "We're expanding," he said. "We could use someone with your accounting experience. Consulting work. Well paid." There it was, the carrot on a silver fork. "Oh, Jonathan, I'd love to see how your business works." What he didn't know, he had just handed me the keys to his entire criminal kingdom.
3 days later, a courier delivered a heavy envelope to my door. Inside, a consulting contract, 6 subsidiary financial portfolios, shipping logs, international transfer summaries. The irony was so delicious, I nearly laughed. Jonathan Hawthorne had given me legal access to everything I needed to destroy him. I called Diane. Diane panicking. "You took the job? Evelyn, are you insane?" "No," I said calmly. "Just very, very motivated." "You're now legally bound to keep their secrets." Slow, cold smile. Paragraph 8, subsection D. "I am only bound to confidentiality regarding legal business practices. Illegal activity is specifically excluded." "Good God," Diane whispered. "They really don't know who they're dealing with." By midnight that night, surrounded by papers, coffee, and my old investigative instincts, I found it. Not sloppiness, not mistakes, patterns, sophisticated ones. Money bouncing between Cayman Islands, Luxembourg, Malta, Panama. Cargo listed at one value at departure and another at arrival. Payments routed through at least 11 shell companies. This wasn't tax evasion anymore. Voice low, serious, intense. This was money laundering on an international scale. I sat back, heart steady, breath measured. The Hawthorns weren't just wealthy, they were criminals. Michael texted, "Looking forward to dinner Saturday. Camilla is excited to see you." I stared at the message for a long moment. My son, naive, blind, married into something he didn't understand. But he'd understand soon. I picked up my pen and began writing notes. If the Hawthorns wanted my professional opinion, I would give it to them. And when I was finished, Michael would finally see what kind of woman he married and what kind of empire he married into.
Saturday night felt like walking into a stage play, except every actor was lying. Michael and Camilla's new home, a wedding gift from Jonathan Hawthorne. A Georgian revival estate worth at least $4.8 million. Circular driveway, imported marble floors, art pieces that cost more than most people's annual salary. "Isn't it gorgeous, Evelyn? Daddy insisted on hiring his designer." "It's impressive." Inside, everything smelled like money, power, and something rotten beneath the flowers. Michael brought a wine bottle from their private cellar. A 2006 Brunello Reserva, about $1,750 a bottle. "Mom, you have to try this." I sipped. "It's lovely," I said softly. "Though I have to ask, Michael, how exactly are you two affording all this?" The question dropped like a stone. Camilla's smile froze. Michael's eyes flicked nervously. Camilla's family, they've been generous." "Generous how? Gifts? Loans? Employment opportunities?" "Mom," that warning tone again. I tilted my head. Calm? Deadly. "Sweetheart, I'm simply asking." Before he could answer, my phone buzzed with an email. From Rebecca Miles, U.S. Treasury. "Found exactly what you asked for. Hawthorne Global flagged for suspicious activity reports in 2020 and 2022. Evidence lacking then. might be different now if someone had documents. My heart thudded once, cold, controlled. Michael frowned. Everything okay? Just work, I replied smoothly, sliding my phone back. At dessert, Camilla leaned back, tilting her head. Evelyn, Daddy said you're reviewing some of our business documents. How exciting! Her eyes were sharp, too sharp. She was testing me. I find your father's business model fascinating. He's brilliant, always staying ahead of regulations. Ah, that phrase again. A criminal's favorite expression. I asked politely, so which charities are you involved with, Camilla? She lit up. Oh, several. The Maritime Legacy Foundation, the International Trade Scholars Guild, the Caribbean Renewal Initiative. We do such meaningful work. Meaningful work? I had just seen those names in transaction logs, in laundering routes, in suspicious donations. It felt like ice sliding down my spine. Those charities were shells, and she was running them.
Driving home, I replayed every detail. Her fixed smile, Michael's tense shoulders, the glances they exchanged, her slip about transparency, the charity names matching questionable transfers. They weren't feeding me dinner. They were probing, seeing how much I knew. And when I mentioned the Caribbean shipping routes, her eyes flickered. Just for half a second, but that was enough. They knew I was digging, which meant the clock had started. Monday morning arrived gray and heavy. The Hawthorne Global Tower loomed over the city, 31 stories of glass and intimidation, reflecting a polished empire built on lies. Jonathan's assistant, Patricia Webb, escorted me through mahogany-lined corridors. Mr. Hawthorne will see you now. His office was obscene. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the harbor, a desk the size of a conference table, a rug that probably cost $85,000. Jonathan stood smiling that controlled smile predators wear. Evelyn, thank you for coming. Let's discuss your project scope. He pushed a folder across the desk. I opened it, and my blood chilled. The new contract. A trap. They were stripping my access. No shipping manifests, no international accounts, no customs data, no subsidiary ledgers, no financial trails. I was now only allowed to review office operational efficiency, office supplies, printer toner, break room inventory. They wanted to muzzle me. They wanted to turn me from a threat into a harmless decoration. I looked up. This is quite a change. We realize the original scope was too ambitious. This will help you ease in. And if I continue analyzing your international routes? Silence. A dangerous, heavy silence. Jonathan's posture changed. So did his voice. You're a consultant, Evelyn, not an auditor. In my experience, the two go hand in hand. Not here, he snapped. The mask slipped entirely. Evelyn, he said carefully, opportunities like this don't come often. Consider your position. Ah, there it was. A threat wrapped in politeness. I think you misunderstand who I am. He frowned. You assume I want your money, your approval, your family's acceptance. I stepped closer. I want none of that. I leaned in, smiling. All I want, Jonathan, is the truth. And I'm very good at finding it. His eyes hardened. Be careful, Evelyn. You're playing in a league you don't understand. I tilted my head. You're wrong. You're playing a game I helped invent. I walked away. His empire behind me, his fear settling around him like fog. By the time the elevator reached the lobby, my phone rang. Rebecca Miles from Treasury. Evelyn, the documents you found, how fast can you get them to me? I stepped onto the wet pavement, the drizzle cold on my skin. And for the first time since the wine spilled down my gown, I felt alive.
I met Rebecca Miles from the Treasury Department at a small coffee shop downtown, the kind where government analysts blend into the background between students and freelancers. She flipped through the files I brought. Her eyes widened, her breath hitched. "Evelyn, this is a prosecutor's fantasy. You've connected transactions across 19 different subsidiaries?" I sipped my coffee, slow, steady. 24, I corrected softly. I found 5 more over the weekend. Rebecca looked up sharply. The Caribbean routes alone hide almost $42 million in undeclared revenue. I leaned closer, lowering my voice. And that's just the surface. Rebecca shook her head in awe. "They handed you all this?" "They delivered it to my home by courier," I said with a smile. "Signed, sealed, and granted me full legal access." "What about confidentiality?" "Paragraph 8, subsection D. No obligation to hide illegal activity." Rebecca sat back, stunned. They really thought they were untouchable. They've been right for 30 years. I opened the second folder. "Look at these," I said. Corporate documents dating back to the 1990s. Old records, early transfers, foundations built on lies. Rebecca's expression hardened. "The Hawthorns have been laundering for 3 decades? Through what industries?" I slid over the evidence. All of them. Weapons trafficking, human trafficking, narcotics distribution, shady offshore conglomerates, criminal clients paying for clean money. Rebecca's face went pale. "How much total are we talking?" "Conservative estimate." I paused, then delivered the number. Over $240 million in laundered Hawthorne income and nearly $1.2 billion from external criminal networks. Rebecca closed the folder. "Evelyn, you didn't just unravel a corporation. You just exposed one of the largest criminal networks on the East Coast." As I walked to my car, my phone rang. "Michael." His voice was sharp with panic. "Mum, where are you? Something's happening." "Downtown. Why?" "Federal agents are at Hawthorne Global Sitting asking questions about shipping records, taxes, international transfers." Ah, Rebecca had moved fast. "It sounds like they're doing their job." "Mum, please tell me you didn't do something reckless." "Reckless? No, sweetheart. I did exactly what Jonathan hired me to do." "What does that mean?" "It means," I said calmly, "I analyzed their business practices and shared my findings with the proper authorities." "You went to the government?" "I went to the truth." "You've destroyed everything." "No," I whispered. "They destroyed themselves. I simply stopped covering for them." He went silent. For the first time, he sounded like a boy realizing the adults around him were monsters. That night, the headline hit local news. "Massive federal investigation targets Hawthorne Global Shipping." The anchor's voice was calm, clinical, unaware of the bloodbath beneath the surface. I poured a glass of wine and sat on my couch,
watching the empire crumble. A year ago, this family had tried to humiliate me over a drop of water. Now, the government was dismantling their dynasty piece by piece. But victory didn't feel sweet. It felt necessary, like pulling a thorn out of your own flesh. Painful, but healing.
The next morning, my phone rang again. 3 calls. 3 turning points. First call. My lawyer. The Hawthorns hired the most expensive criminal defense firm on the East Coast. Of course they did. Second call. Rebecca. Jonathan Hawthorne was arrested at 6:14 a.m. Good, I whispered. Third call. Michael. His voice was broken. Mom, can I come over? Yes, I said softly. Come home. When he arrived, he looked like someone had punched the innocence out of him. They arrested Camilla's dad. She's hysterical. I poured him coffee. His hands trembled. Michael, I said gently, how are you holding up? I don't know, he whispered. I never imagined any of this. He looked up, eyes red. Mom, is it really as bad as the news says? What are they saying? Money laundering, RICO charges, fraud, criminal conspiracy going back decades. Every word is true. He buried his face in his hands. How did I not see it? How did I marry into this? Because you're good, and good people don't look for evil in the people they love. He looked at me with haunted eyes. What's going to happen to Camilla? I hesitated. Slow, careful. It depends on how involved she was. She wasn't involved, he insisted softly. She doesn't know anything about the business. I quietly opened a folder. The charity documents. I pushed them toward him. Michael, look at these. He flipped through them, frowned. Confusion turned to disbelief. Disbelief to horror. These charities, she runs them. I nodded. They're not charities, sweetheart. They're money funnels. She told me they helped kids and families. No, I said quietly. They helped criminals. His expression shattered. She lied to me about everything. I'm sorry, I said and meant it. He stood up abruptly, pacing, fists clenched. What do I do? You start over. You step away from the Hawthorns, legally, financially, professionally. His voice trembled. Can you help me? Of course, I said softly. But first, tell me the truth. Did you know anything, even a hint? He looked right at me. And for the first time in months, I saw my son again. No, he whispered. I swear, I knew nothing. I put my hand over his. Then we face this together. Exactly 72 hours after Jonathan's arrest, the Hawthorns made their next move. A lawyer knocked on my door. Not just any lawyer. Charles Whitmore. Old money, Harvard-educated, intimidating suit, the kind of man who charges $950 an hour just to breathe in your direction. He sat at my kitchen table, briefcase snapping open like a trap. Mrs. Carter, my client, Camilla Hawthorne, has concerns about your conduct. I sipped my tea, calm, unbothered. I'm sure she does. You used your consulting access to sabotage the family business. This is corporate espionage, possibly criminal. I smiled gently. Have you read the contract? Of course. Then you saw paragraph 8, subsection D. His expression faltered. I continued.
No obligation to conceal illegal activity. Camilla's father gave me legal access to all evidence I provided. Charles didn't blink, but his jaw twitched. So I twisted the knife. You should advise your client, I said softly, that I know about the fake charities. He stiffened. They're legitimate organizations. I slid a folder across the table. Are they? Inside, a $2.1 million donation to St. Lucia Hurricane Relief. There was no hurricane that year. $890,000 spent on youth maritime programs that did not exist. $1.7 million routed to a Cayman account controlled by Camilla's trust. His eyes flicked through the pages, and for the first time, he broke. What exactly do you want? I want the truth, and I want my son out of this nightmare. Charles stood up abruptly. Cold tone. This isn't over. I smiled. Sweet, soft. Oh, Charles, it hasn't even begun.
The breakthrough didn't come from my investigation, or Rebecca, or the FBI. It came from Camilla, in a moment of breathtaking stupidity. Michael called at 7 a.m., voice cracking. Mom, I need you to come over, right now. And Mom, you were right about everything. When I arrived, there were FBI vans out front, agents carrying boxes, neighbors whispering. Michael met me at the door. Exhausted, broken, changed. They arrested Camilla an hour ago, but that's not the worst part. He led me into his office where Agent Lauren Cruz was waiting. Serious, focused, deadly calm. She gestured to wire transfers laid across the desk. Your daughter-in-law tried to move money last night. How much? I asked. $21 million, she said, in 48 hours. Michael's face drained of color. She was liquidating assets before they could be frozen, which means she obstructed justice, I finished, and destroyed evidence. Agent Cruz nodded. Exactly. She's not just a suspect anymore. She's a primary defendant. Then Agent Cruz slid another folder forward. Camilla's panic led us to accounts we didn't know existed. Accounts going back 40 years. My breath caught. She wasn't done. Mrs. Carter, the Hawthorns aren't just laundering their own money. We've discovered links to 17 criminal organizations. I stared. She continued. Arms dealers, drug cartels, human trafficking rings, international black market brokers, illegal shipping syndicates. Agent Cruz, voice low. They've been laundering for operations generating over $3.2 billion annually. Michael stumbled backward. Are you saying, he said, the family I married into worked with human traffickers? Agent Cruz nodded. For 15 years, one of their partner networks shipped women and children through the eastern seaboard. The room went silent, the kind of silence that suffocates. Then Agent Cruz pulled out a final document, a guest list from the wedding. We analyzed attendees. Do you remember a man named Victor Kokanev? A man at table 12. Quiet, strangely out of place. Yes, I said slowly. He's the head of a Russian crime syndicate based in Brighton Beach. My pulse stopped, and he wasn't the only one, she continued. There were representatives from 3 other major criminal organizations. Michael staggered. You mean
My wedding? He said. Your wedding was a meeting, a business demonstration. Camilla's public humiliation of your mother was a power display. My heart froze. That's why she did it, I realized. To show criminals she had control. Agent Cruz nodded. Humiliating someone publicly and getting away with it proves dominance in those circles. Michael bowed his head. Broken? Devastated. Enraged. She used my wedding to intimidate criminals? No, I said quietly. She used you. Michael's jaw clenched, a new kind of fire in his eyes. What do you need me to do? The trial began on a crisp October morning. United States versus Hawthorne and Associates, the largest organized crime case on the East Coast in decades. The courtroom was packed. Press, officials, victims. Michael sat 3 rows ahead of me, shoulders squared, ready to testify against the woman he once loved. When I took the stand, the room fell silent. Mrs. Carter, how did this investigation begin? I looked at the jury. Calm, steady, truthful. I spills a drop of water on my daughter-in-law's wedding dress. She responded by throwing red wine on my $62,000 couture gown. A ripple passed through the courtroom. And that made me curious, I said softly. Very curious. I walked them through the evidence with precision. Shell companies, offshore accounts, manipulated manifests, false declarations, laundering routes, fake charities, criminal partnerships. 6 hours of testimony, every word a scalpel.
Against her lawyer's pleading, Camilla insisted on testifying. Arrogance will do that. Prosecutor Walsh. Mrs. Hawthorne, name a single beneficiary of your educational charity. Silence. Name one, Walsh repeated. Camilla's composure cracked. Camilla snapping. So what if the charities weren't real? Everyone does it. Everyone with money finds ways around taxes. We just got caught. The courtroom gasped. Judge Martinez banged her gavel. But damage? Done. Camilla had just confessed. And worse, she showed absolute contempt for the law. After only 3 hours of deliberation. Checkmark, Jonathan Hawthorne, 47 years. Checkmark, Camilla Hawthorne, 27 years. Check, 14 co-conspirators, 6 to 30 years. Check, network dismantled. Check, over $700 million in assets seized. Check, international partners arrested. A dynasty collapsed. A criminal empire reduced to rubble. All because one woman thought she could humiliate someone and walk away untouched. 6 months later, Michael and I sat at Romano's, the same place Jonathan tried buying my silence. Michael, quiet. Any regrets? I thought about everything. The wedding, the wine, the humiliation, the evidence, the trial. Then I smiled softly. No, I said. No regrets at all. He stirred his coffee. Michael, half smile. Do you think I'll ever trust again? Of course, I said gently. You're a good man. Good men heal. He looked up. Michael, half smile. Next time I date someone, will you run a background check? I laugh. Soft but sharp. Sweetheart, next time you date someone, I'll run a background check on her entire family and anyone who's ever shared a cup of tea with them. He laughed, truly laughed, for the first time in a year. And in that moment, I realized something. Camilla Hawthorne didn't just lose. She lost beautifully. because she awakened a forensic accountant with nothing left to lose and 30 years of skill to tear her world down. And that was the biggest mistake of her privileged life. Soft, steady, reflective tone. If you stayed with me until the end, thank you. Stories like this remind us of one truth. Evil isn't always loud. Sometimes it walks in wearing diamonds, smiling sweetly and calling itself family. But justice arrives quietly and then shakes the world. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to subscribe to Red Silk Revenge. And tell me where you're watching from. Your support helps these stories find the people who need them most. And before you go, let me ask you this. Would you have forgiven Camilla? Or would you have taken the same revenge? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. Until next time, stay strong, stay kind, and never underestimate a quiet storm.